Okay, hello everybody, I'm ToeGrinder, and this is going to be my fire guide for 10.2 Dragonflight Season 3. If you don't know who I am, I'm a Mage theory crafting contributor, I'm an expert in the Mage Discord, I'm the developer, maintainer, and guide writer of the website magehub.com. In-game, I'm the guildmaster of the Guild Mist on Taran Mill EU, where I've achieved a plethora of Hall of Fame titles and Mythic Plus Rank 1 titles. My written guide is linked in the description. I recommend you check it out. It's updated a lot more frequently than you can update a video, so always check it out for the most up-to-date talents and rotation. And for the purposes of this video, I am going to assume that you know what your spells do. So let's just get stuck right in. Okay, starting off with talents for Raid. There's not a huge amount of choice. You can move with these Winter's Protection points and these Arcane Warding points, but I do not recommend it. We want to pick up all the throughput traits, so Encounter Slow, Shifting Power, and then Temporal Warp and Time Anomaly. Temporal Warp is pretty much always the best. You can argue in certain situations where you lust late into the fight that you'll get less value out of Temporal Warp, which is true, but if you're lusting late in a fight, then clearly the end of the fight is important, so having a second lust that you can stack there is really important. Ice Nova is technically a throughput trait because it's a button you can press if you need to move. I pick up Blast Wave, but I don't actually think it's particularly useful in Raid, but it does let us get down to energized barriers in 1 point. And then honourable mention to Dragon's Breath. It is currently not a throughput trait, but if we are ever in a situation where we're taking Alexstrasza's Fury, it does become a throughput trait because it contributes to Hot Streak. Also, I pick up Ice Cold, and I recommend Ice Cold in most builds, but if you're ever in a situation where you need the immunity from Ice Block, then just spec out of this and put the points, anywhere else, like in here. But something to keep in mind is if you spec out of Ice Cold to have regular Ice Block, Winter's Protection and Cryo Freeze become a lot worse. So I recommend you take the points out of Cryo Freeze and just put them like somewhere else. Either in the Incantation of Swiftness, Diverted Energy, Tempest Barrier. But default to this for most of the time. Over in the Fire tree, this is pretty standard, so as we move down the tree, you have to take everything at the start. One thing you might notice is that we're dropping Firestarter this patch. That's because Crit is becoming really good and Combustion's getting a lot better, so we want to just go into Combustion straight away and then start farming our Combustion back as quickly as possible, which of course makes Firestarter worse. You can be in situations where the fight timings on a certain boss make you want to play Firestarter, so if you can delay Combustion and play Firestarter without losing a Combustion cast, then obviously that can be really good, but that's on a fight-by-fight basis. We're still playing the Scorch Execute talents, and Flame On and Critical Mass, we are taking 2 points in each. On the right-hand side of the tree here, you can see we move down and take 2 of the Living Bomb talents before we reach Firefall, so we never actually cast Living Bomb. Living Bomb is completely terrible, and these 2 talents are basically dead talents. The reason we do this is because Firefall is completely busted. It is an insanely good talent. It's one of the best talents in the tree, so it's basically worth spending 3 points just to get to it. And then coming down, we go down to Controlled Destruction and Sun King's Blessing at the bottom. The only points you can really move around here in Raid are what I was saying. If you want to abuse fight timings, you can take this point out of Controlled Destruction and put it in Firestarter. And if you're ever in a situation where it's not a random meteor, but you don't have complete control over it. If the boss is moving a lot and that meteor is going to miss, then obviously this talent becomes a lot less useful. So you can just drop these 3 points and put them into different points somewhere else in the tree. Like this. Okay, whenever it comes to AoE, multi-target, and Mythic Plus, there are 2 main builds that you can go into. There's the Flamestrike build and the Ignite build. I'll talk about when you should use either of those builds later in the guide in the rotation sections, but I'll just show both builds right now. Before I get into that, I'll quickly show the class tree. For Mythic Plus, you want to pick up all the random bits of utility: Decurse, Spell Steal, Dragon's Breath, Blast Wave to stop casts, and Ring of Frost. You don't need all of these in every dungeon, but it is nice to just have them if you want some kind of generic build that you can just run in every dungeon. This is good because you'll never be missing anything. One honourable mention is there could be opportunities to switch Mass Barrier to Mass Invisibility for skips, but it's a lot worse than Shroud, so we'll see if that actually ends up happening. So starting off with the Flamestrike build, it's as simple as pick up all the Flamestrike talents. First off, we want to make sure that our Flamestrike contributes to Hot Streak. We're playing Flame Patch and Incendiary Eruptions. And then going down, we're playing Meteor as well. We're not picking up Deep Impact because we want Meteor to do good AoE damage. We're dropping our Fire Fireball talent, and then we're picking up the talents that make Phoenix Flames good on AoE. So whenever it comes to the Ignite build, we're making a couple of changes. We're dropping these Flamestrike talents down the side because we're going to want to use Pyroblast. We're picking up these 3 talents for Firefall again. Just want to abuse Firefall for those good Meteor procs, and we're playing the base Meteor spell as well. We're switching Alexstrasza's Fury over to From the Ashes because we want the extra Mastery, because that benefits our Ignite damage. And then we're picking up Master of Flame, which also buffs our Ignite damage. So the Fire Mage rotation revolves around 2 main concepts. One is maximizing your hot streak generation, and the second is maximizing your damage during combustion. So fire is all based around hot streak. Hot streak is gained by critting twice in a row. So 1 critical strike gives you heating up, which doesn't do anything on its own, but a crit while heating up is active will give you hot streak. Hot streak makes your next Pyroblast or Flamestrike instant cast and makes it do extra ignite damage. In order to help you do this, Fireblast is castable while casting and always crits. So your filler follows a pretty strict cycle. You cast Fireball until 1 crits and gives us heating up. Then you press Fireblast to convert the heating up into a hot streak. And then you cast Pyroblast at the end of the cast. And then you just repeat this sequence the whole way through the filler until your combustion comes back up. We always want to cast a Fireball before an instant Pyroblast so that both spells land at the same time. This is because there's a small grace window where if one spell crits and the other one doesn't, we don't lose the heating up from the spell that crit. Note that this trick doesn't work with Scorch because Scorch has an instant travel time, so keep that in mind if you're moving or using Searing Touch. So before we get into Combustion, what it is and how to use it, it's just important you know about Sun King's Blessing. So Sun King's Blessing says after you consume 8 hot streaks, your next non-instant Pyroblasts grant you Combustion for 6 seconds. So, as you can see here, I'm at 7 hot streaks in a row, so if I go up to 8, I will gain the Sun King's Blessing buff, and then if I hard cast a Pyroblast or a Flamestrike, I will gain Combustion for 6 seconds, as you can see here. Combustion is our main DPS cooldown, and it's where a lot of our damage comes from. To maximize our damage during combustion, we want to enter with as many Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames charges as possible, and this logic of pulling these spells also applies to combustions gained from Sun King's Blessing. So during combustion, we want to cast as many Pyroblasts as possible. So an ideal combustion consists of chaining instant casts and alternating between Pyroblast and one other spell. Because we have a 100% crit chance, our hot streaks and heating ups are completely deterministic, so every Pyroblast will crit, and then we just need to cast one other spell to convert that heating up into a hot streak before we can Pyroblast again. So the priority of what that other spell that you alternate with Pyroblast is goes as follows. You cast Fireball if you have the Flame Accelerant buff, otherwise you just cast Fireblast. If you've no Fireblast charges, you cast Phoenix Flames, and if you have no Fireblast or Phoenix Flames charges, you just cast a Scorch. The reason we cast Scorch is because it has a faster travel time and cast time, so it just lets us generate that heating up quicker. If you're above 100% haste, though, you want to cast Fireball instead of Scorch. You also want to consume any Sun King's Blessing procs during combustion, so if you reach 8 stacks of Sun King's Blessing and you're in combustion, you do want to hard cast a Pyroblast. If you consume a Sun King's Blessing while you're in combustion, it will add 6 seconds to your current combustion duration. However, if you cast combustion while one is already active from Sun King's Blessing, it'll simply reset your combustion to the base duration. You should always use combustion on cooldown as much as possible. It can be delayed slightly if there's adds or an extra damage phase, and you want to take advantage of the ignite cleave, but in general, you should be trying to cast combustion as much as possible. Okay, so I'm going to be showing an example combustion slowed down. So if you have no heating up and you want to enter combustion, you want to cast Fireball, Fireblast during the cast, Combustion during the cast, and then cast Scorch at the end of the cast, followed by 2 Pyroblasts. I'll show that here. So you can see I Fireblast during the cast, Combustion, Scorch, and then Pyroblast twice. And then I spend all my Fireblasts to generate hot streaks. Then once I'm out of Fireblasts, I start using Phoenix Flames. A Fireblast comes back, so I use it. And then I cast Fireball with the Flame Acceleration buff. The one thing I just showed off there was what's called a double Pyroblast trick. So there's a few situations where you might Scorch during combustion and you need to be aware of the double Pyro trick. So it essentially lets you cast 2 Pyroblasts in a row without generating in between. And this only works when all spells are guaranteed to crit. So to perform this trick, you simply cast Scorch with a hot streak, or you can convert a heating up into a hot streak during the cast, and then at the end of the cast you can press Pyroblast twice. So you might be wondering, why does this work? So your Scorch cast finishes and you have a hot streak, but you do not gain heating up or hot streak immediately because there's a server side delay in you gaining that buff. And then during that delay, you then consume your current hot streak with a Pyroblast. You then gain heating up from your Scorch once the server's done applying the buff, and then your Pyroblast lands and converts that heating up into a hot streak, and then you can Pyroblast again. So this is pretty useful during Combustion if you ever need to Scorch. It's nice because it lets you have more control over when you refresh your Feel the Burn buff. Okay, now to go over the opener. If you're not playing Firestarter, the opener's simple. You just enter Combustion like I just showed. But if you are playing Firestarter, there's a little bit more to the opener. So to start off, we're going to precast a Pyroblast, and we're going to use our Lust effects. And what we're going to do is we're going to Pyroblast, Fireblast, Pyroblast, Fireblast, as if we were in Combustion to get rid of all our Fireblast charges, and then we're going to use Shifting Power. Because we're going to be in Combustion for a while, it means it'll be a long time before we use Shifting Power, so we just want to use it before we enter Combustion. So just showing that off, you can see I precast my Pyroblast here, I Fireblast during the cast, and then I use my Bloodlust effects. So you can see I dump all my Fireblasts. Once I'm out of Fireblasts, I Shifting Power, and I Fireblast again to prevent overcapping. And then I'm just going to Fireball, Pyroblast, and Fireblast together. I want to maintain my Feel the Burn buff the whole way up to 8 stacks of Sun King's Blessing. And then once I'm at 8 stacks of Sun King's Blessing, I hardcast Pyroblast, and I activate Combustion at the end of the cast, and then I just enter a normal Combustion rotation from here. I'm Fireblasting if I have charges, I'm Fireballing if I have the Flame Accelerant buff, and I'm Phoenix Flamesing if I have no Fireblast charges left. You can see the way I'm timing this is that I'm refreshing Feel the Burn as late as possible, so I keep uptime on that buff. Most of the time you won't need to think about Feel the Burn though, because both Fireblast and Phoenix Flames refresh it. And you'll see I use Scorch there whenever I have nothing else to do, and then finish off with a Flame Acceleration since I had that buff. And remember, whenever you're in Combustion, keep consuming your Sun King's Blessing procs to extend the duration of your Combustion. Okay, so as for the filler rotation, so once we come out of Combustion and everything is on cooldown, we've used our Fireblasts and our Phoenix Flames, the first thing we want to do is Shifting Power. And then after that, we're just going to go back into that cycle I was talking about earlier in the video, where we're casting Fireballs. Once one crits, we press Fireblast to convert it, and then we Pyroblast at the end. If you want, you can Phoenix Flames to stop yourself over capping, or you can save them for Combustion. So you can see I'm just casting spells here and building up my Sun King's Blessing procs. So once you start getting high stacks of Sun King's Blessing, you want to start saving your Fireblast and Phoenix Flame. So you can see here, I'm only one off, so I'm not going to use Fireblast anymore. I'm going to keep casting until I naturally crit twice. If I don't naturally crit twice in a row, I'll use the Fireblast whenever I'm really close to overcapping. So you can see here, I'm nearly overcapping, so now I'm going to use the Fireblast. And then I'm just going to go into Sun King's Blessing as normal. And then I use my regular Combustion rotation, except it's for a much shorter period of time since it's only 6 seconds. And then once the Sun King's Blessing's done, I'll just keep doing that filler rotation. And then eventually, as you can see here, Combustion will come back and we will enter that Combustion rotation I showed earlier. In that filler cycle, I did show an example there where I was sort of pulling my Fireblast and Phoenix Flames, aka I wasn't using them whenever I was getting close to reaching 8 stacks of Sun King's Blessing. This pulling logic is something you want to do anytime you're entering Combustion, even if you have a regular Combustion coming up, not from Sun King's Blessing, you want to stop using Fireblast. So like 15-20 seconds before Combustion, you want to start thinking, okay, how many Fireblasts do I have? And make sure that whenever you cast Combustion, you have as many as possible. Okay. So like I said earlier in the video, there are 2 AoE builds for fire. There is the Flamestrike build, which spends hot streaks on Flamestrike, and there is the Ignite build, which spends hot streaks on Pyroblast. So how do you know which build to play? So the Ignite build is better up to roughly 5 or 6 targets, and the Flamestrike build is better after that. So the Flamestrike build is better for big AoE, and the Ignite build is better for lower AoE and priority target damage. So the Ignite build has better priority target damage because you're spending hot streak on Pyroblast, so while you're also AoEing through Ignite, you're also doing single target damage, whereas the Flamestrike build is just doing pure AoE, it's doing the same damage to everything. A big plus to the Flamestrike build, which is not really mentioned in numbers, is that it doesn't have a ramp up time. So with the Ignite build, you have to be pummeling one target and you have to build up that Ignite, and so it does its damage over a longer period of time, whereas the Flamestrike build is a lot more front loaded. In keys, you're probably going to use a mixture of both builds. But I do recommend that if you're doing mostly lower keys, that you use the Flamestrike build because that front-loaded damage is going to be really important whenever stuff dies really fast. Okay, starting off with the Flamestrike build, I'm going to show an example AoE Flamestrike Combustion. So to start off, we're going to precast Meteor, and then we're going to cast Scorch, Fireblast, Combustion, and make sure Combustion activates before Meteor lands. And then other than that, we're going to do the same rotation as single target, except we're just going to Flamestrike instead of Pyroblasting. So we're going to go Flamestrike, Fireblast, and then once we run out of Fireblast, we're going to use Phoenix Flames instead. We're going to do this until Combustion is done. Okay, I'm going to be showing the AoE filler now. Again, similar to Combustion, we really just replace Pyroblast with Flamestrike. So immediately after Combustion, we're going to go into Shifting Power and then into our Sun King's Blessing. You'll notice here, whenever I'm hard casting Flamestrike, I do not convert it all the way to a hot streak. This is because of how Flamestrike works, is rather than it being on the spell's impact, it's just a chance equal to your critical strike whenever you cast it, which means you gain the hot streak immediately from the Flamestrike, giving you no chance to spend any current hot streaks. So if I converted this heating up into a hot streak, I would be wasting a crit, basically. And you can see the priority is exactly the same, except I'm fire blasting and then I'm Phoenix Flaming when there's no fire blasts left. You can also see something I'll do here is I'll use Dragon's Breath outside Combustion because of Alexstras's Fury. That's a guaranteed crit because of the talents we're playing on AoE. And Phoenix Flames is also a guaranteed crit because of Alexstras's Fury, which makes it a bit cleaner whenever we're trying to convert spells into hot streaks to give us Sun King's Blessing. We can build a bit faster. Whenever you have Meteor, you always want to hold Meteor for Sun King's Blessing. So you can see here, Flamestrike, and then I'm straight into Meteor. Always use it with a Sun King's Blessing or a Combustion. Okay, I'm just going to show you an example Ignite Combustion. So before the Combustion, we're going to cast Living Bomb and Meteor, and then we're going to enter it the same way we would on single target. We're going to activate Combustion and time it so that Meteor and Living Bomb both go off inside Combustion. And then we're going to prioritize Fire Blasts to generate hot streaks, and then Phoenix Flames once we're out of Fire Blasts. After Combustion, we're going to cast Shifting Power like we always do, and then enter Sun King's Blessing. You can see I cast Living Bomb before I enter Sun King's Blessing so that it explodes during the Combustion. And then it's just the same priority as single target. Do note that your Phoenix Flames are not guaranteed to crit with this build as we're playing from the Ashes. Okay, for completionist's sake, I'm going to explain how Ignite works, but I'm going to try and be brief. If you want a really in-depth description, it's in my written guide, and you can pause the video and read what's on the screen. But don't worry, if you don't really fully need to understand it. But essentially, whenever you cast a spell on a target, a percentage of the damage is stored as an Ignite dot over 9 seconds. Whenever you cast a spell on a target that already has Ignite, the damage is added to the total damage of that Ignite, and it is evenly redistributed over the entire duration of the Ignite. Whenever you cast Fire Blast, the closest 3 or 6 targets with the smallest Ignite bank on them will be classified as potential spread targets. And then if the Ignite bank on them is smaller, the Ignite will spread. So this essentially means whenever you combine that with the even redistribution, is you want to be casting spells on the same target every time, and you want to build up one big Ignite bank on one target and keep spreading off that target every time you press Fire Blast. You don't want to be target swapping with Ignite. If you are target swapping with an Ignite build, you will lose a ton of damage. Okay, so you might be wondering, how does my rotation change in Execute with Searing Touch and Improve Scorch? It's fairly simple. For the most part, you just replace Fireball with Scorch. But one thing to keep in mind is the trick that you can do with Fireball, where whenever you have a heating up and you cast a Pyroblast at the end, does not work. Because Scorch is instant, you saw what happened there. My Scorch hit first, gave me a heating up, and then my Pyroblast hit afterwards, didn't crit, and then I lost the heating up. So one thing to keep in mind whenever you're doing this rotation is you know the Scorch is going to crit. So whenever you're casting Scorch with a heating up, you don't need to press Fire Blast and convert it into a hot streak. You can just let the cast finish and spam Pyroblast as the cast is finishing, and you'll get the crit from the Scorch, and you can send the Pyroblast. You don't need to use your Fire Blast as much during Execute because you know your Scorch is going to crit. You have a 100% crit chance, and it's going to let you build up to Sun King's Blessing very quickly and pull your Fire Blasts. You might be wondering how to use Flame Accelerant during Execute. During your Execute filler rotation, you just ignore it, but you still consume it during Combustion. So whenever it comes to Improved Scorch, you don't really need to worry about it in filler during Execute because you cast Scorch so frequently that it's just always going to be up. The one time you do need to think about it is during Combustion. If I was to go into an example Combustion here, you can see I don't cast Scorch naturally, I'm casting other spells. So one thing that if I just keep casting spells, my Improved Scorch is going to drop. So you do need to be using Scorch inside Combustion to maintain this buff, but it's only going to be 1 or 2 in each combust because the buff lasts for such a long time. So the final thing to go over in this guide is how do you use Temporal Warp. So generally what happens is you will use Temporal Warp with your Grip's Bloodlust on pull, and then 5 minutes, roughly 5 minutes into the fight, it'll be slightly less than that because of shifting power, you will just use Temporal Warp with your next Combustion. Ideally, you do want to wait till 5 minutes because you can then sync it with your potion. And then at 10 minutes, you can use it with your closest Combustion again. Something to keep in mind is that if you're in Mythic Plus, if you're the only Lust class, you need to make sure that you have Time Warp available at the 10-minute mark so that you can Lust for your Grip. If you're in a raid and you're not the only Lust class, then because of shifting power, you can use it at like 9 minutes. But just keep that in mind in dungeons that you need to make sure that you have it up whenever your Grip needs Lust. Okay, now I'm going to be getting into stats and gearing. Remember that you should always sim yourself, and item level is quite frequently an upgrade, but I'll go over what the stats do. So haste reduces the cast time of our spells, the GCD, and the recharge time of Fire Blast. Verse is just a flat damage increase and damage taken reduction. Crit increases our critical strike chance, which is important because we generate more hot streaks. It also gets converted into Mastery during Combustion with the improved Combustion talent. 75% of our critical strike becomes Mastery during Combustion. And with Kindling, critical and strike increases the frequency of our combustions because we crit more CDR, more combustions. And then Mastery increases the damage that our Ignite spells do. So generally how you prioritize the stats are haste is the most important basically all the time, then verse, and then crit, and then mastery. Notes on how certain things affect our stats. So Firestarter drastically reduces the value of crit. Searing Touch slightly reduces the value of crit. Kindling slightly increases the value of crit. Feel the Burn slightly reduces the value of mastery. And Flame Patch increases the value of haste when casting Flamestrike. So on single target you want mainly haste verse, although crit is pretty good too. On AoE, you want haste and you want mastery if you're using an Ignite Cleave build, and you want haste verse if you're using a Flamestrike build. Okay, now getting into trinkets. Your best two trinkets are Augury and Bellerelos. Augury drops from the last boss and is a very rare item, and Bellerelos drops from Tindral Sage Swift. Some other good options are Vessel from Dungeons, Nimuse from the raid, Oak Hearts from Darkheart Thicket, Mirror of Fractured Tomorrows from the Mega Dungeon. Balefire Branch is another good active trinket, and Pip's Emerald Friendship Badge from the raid as well is another good item. Something to keep in mind is that you never want to use two active trinkets. You either want to use an active trinket and a passive, or two passive trinkets. So whenever it comes to crafting and embellishments, your best embellishments are double Shadow Flame. So you want to craft items with Shadow Flame on low budget slots, so good options are Belt, Feet, and Bracers. Another option for crafting early on is to craft a one-handed weapon. Even though it doesn't have an embellishment, you can craft your embellished items at a low item level and then use your first token on a weapon. Okay, thank you very much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it if you made it this far. Remember, check out my written guide in the description if you want to review anything or see anything even more in depth. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you have any feedback for this guide, please do let me know. If you liked it, like and subscribe, and check out my other videos. But otherwise, thank you very much. Take care, everybody, and I will see you in the next video, hopefully.